The most expensive thing in your life won't appear on your bank statement. Rather, it's going to be the missed opportunities that you never pursued because you believe that you weren't qualified. And I truly believe that limiting beliefs are one of the biggest reasons why so many people never accomplish their goals. Now, before we start this video, we have to define what a limiting belief is, or what the limiting belief I'm describing is. And to me, a limiting belief is a belief about yourself or the world that prevents you from reaching your highest potential. Limiting beliefs are the things that you and I have repeated to ourselves, like, I'm too far behind, wealthy people don't come from my background, because of my gender, I don't know if I can accomplish this, I don't belong in spaces like this, and the list goes on. And one of the big reasons why limiting beliefs are so expensive is that they will stop you from going after the opportunities that would have driven you to the highest version of yourself. And I want to start this example off with a story. One thing about me is I currently drive an older vehicle, right? At the time of this recording, I drive a Honda. And shout out to anyone who's watching and you drive a Honda. One thing that my mom has always said to me when I'm driving around really in wealthy neighborhoods, right? Because that's something I love to do. She's always like, you got to be really careful driving around that car in wealthy neighborhoods. And I'll be like, Mom, like, what do you mean by that? Why do I have to be careful? Well, she's like, you're driving an old car in a wealthy neighborhood. People might be suspicious. Look at the color of your skin, yada, yada, yada. And she'll say these things because she's coming from a lens of, okay, she's a mother. She wants to protect her son. Totally get it. But at the same time, that's a limiting belief that if I start to believe that, now I will never enter in spaces like that. So deliberately, I actually go there. I'll drive my car there. I'll walk around those neighborhoods because before you can achieve something, you have to believe it's possible. But if I allowed that limiting belief to come into my mind, if I started to believe that, oh yes, she's right, because I drive this old car, I'm not allowed in neighborhoods like this, or because of the color of my skin, I don't think I can accomplish X, Y, and Z. It would be a reason why I never go out and achieve it in the first place. And this gets super deep, so I want you to pay attention with me. And if you can't stick through this video, I don't know what else to tell you. And this is something I have to be extremely cautious with, right? I constantly have to challenge the beliefs that other people are telling me or the beliefs that I'm hearing in my own head. Because remember, if you allow limiting beliefs to perpetuate in your mind, you're going to start to truly believe that they're true, and they become limiting because they stop you from becoming the person that you were meant to be. And another example that I think about this, and this happened quite recently, was I spent my time working directly in research, right? And one thing that I learned in research when I was getting hired was the supervisor at the time had told me, like, most people who apply to the position that you're applying for, they have a master's degree. And at the time of this recording, I currently don't have a master's degree. I did my undergraduate degree, but I haven't done my master's. And nonetheless, I still went ahead and I still went to apply. And luckily for me, in that case, I was actually successful at the job. They needed somebody. So even though on paper, I didn't have the qualifications that they were looking for, I was still able to succeed in that role, do extremely well. And funny enough, in that opportunity, that's the most a job has ever paid me. And it was because I didn't allow my limiting beliefs of qualifications to stop me from going after what I wanted to achieve. And there's so many examples of this, and I'm sure you have your own examples for when you let a limiting belief stop you from going after the life that you wanted to create, or on the flip side, when you ignored a limiting belief and your limiting belief got challenged. And I think about that story of the job so many times because if I didn't even apply, if I didn't step forward with that, there were so many missed opportunities there, so many connections that wouldn't have been formed. And when people are always like, okay, what's the worst that can happen in this scenario, right? For me, at the time of applying for that job specifically, the worst thing that could have happened was I just didn't get that job. And the crazy thing about this is my circumstances wouldn't have changed because I didn't have the job before I got it, if you understand what I mean. And I see so many people constantly, time and time again, allow their limiting beliefs to stop them from going for their life that they want to pursue. And listen, if you're a high performer, you understand that you cannot allow your limiting beliefs stop you or destroy the life that you were meant to always build. And although I'm giving you these examples of me breaking my limiting beliefs and making it seem like it's easy, like the concept of breaking a limiting belief is extremely hard, right? Because limiting beliefs are typically formed from pattern recognition, right? As humans, as a species, we've evolved in a way where patterns have protected us and got us out of danger. For example, if we suspect an area might be dangerous, or maybe you grew up in a certain environment and there are certain consistent trends that you constantly see over and over and over again. So your brain has now triggered you to believe that, this is the truth and this is the way life is. Even worse, you might have family or friends constantly telling you these things where they pass down their limiting beliefs towards you, like telling you that it's not possible, that you cannot achieve X, Y, and Z, that it's not realistic to do that. And limiting beliefs become really hard to break because if you don't have examples to counteract those limiting beliefs, it makes sense why people believe them. It makes sense why they get passed down to generations upon generations. And what's crazy is sometimes it's actually easier to believe in a limiting belief than not believe in one. Because if you don't believe in it, it challenges everything that you were taught, everything that you grew up to believe that was true. You start to question life. You start to ask yourself, is this belief true? Is this something that's real, or is this my mind? And I'm at the process now where I am constantly challenging my own limiting beliefs. I'm no longer taking things that people say for face value. I'm constantly assessing, okay, what are my limiting beliefs here? Like when I think back to myself, a big limiting belief that was passed down to me, and at one point I really strongly believed it, was in order to make a lot of money in this society, you need to have a lot of qualifications, high-level degrees, and in some circumstances that remains true. But there's other examples, and I'm sure you and I can both relate, where people don't have the formal education to back them up, and they're still doing phenomenal in terms of income, in terms of finances, and in terms of building wealth. And that's a conversation for another day. I don't want to get into that within this video, video, thing that I want to emphasize here is there's been limiting beliefs that have been perpetuated by your environment, by your friends, by your close loved ones, and certain patterns that you've seen without your own life. And then my first step for you is you need to start to identify what your limiting beliefs are. One of the most common ones I see nowadays is so many people think that they can't accomplish X, Y, and Z because of their gender, right? So I can't do this because I'm a woman, or I can't do this because I come from this background or this ethnicity. And these are limiting beliefs because as you continuously believe them, your subconscious will program you and give you examples of why that's true. Like I said before, our brain recognizes patterns. So if you start to internalize your limiting beliefs over and over and over again, you are going to look for evidence of those limiting beliefs within society. So if you believe, for example, people from a certain background don't make a lot of money, you're going to spend your time looking for people in that background that don't make enough money. And you do this because you want to confirm your beliefs. Like us as humans, we are rational beings. We want to make sense of the world that we're living in, because I know the world seems confusing. There's so many changes, so many adaptations. So if we have a system or a framework to ensure that our beliefs are being made true, then we start to say, okay, I believe in myself. And fundamentally, this is good because this allowed us to evolve as a species, allowed us to grow and thrive. But it becomes a problem when the beliefs that you have, or the beliefs that you're passing down to your friends, or the beliefs that you are taking in and internalizing are negative, and when they're not true. And I want you to remember that just because a belief was inherited doesn't mean it's always true. Another very common limiting belief is around money. I mean, so many of you would probably experience or heard your own versions of this, like starting a business is extremely risky, or the rich are evil, or I'm not entrepreneurial, or you need permission before you start. And this really emphasizes the point that I made earlier, why your limiting beliefs are so expensive. If you truly believe some of those things that I shared, from the rich are evil, or business is risky, or you need permission before you start, do you think you're going to actually go out and live the life that you want to live? Right? The answer to that question is pretty obvious. You're not going to go about doing it. And this is why you need to challenge your limiting beliefs. And a big thing that I've realized is, let's say someone has been giving you their negative limiting beliefs over and over and over again. It's not your responsibility to try to correct them. Like I've been there, I've done it. It's one of the most exhausting processes ever. Your responsibility is to take what you're hearing from them and dispose of it, right? One thing I read in a book, and I love this analogy, is called garbage in, garbage out. Sometimes people are going to say things to you. Sometimes people are going to pass on their limiting beliefs towards you. And once you hear those things, you can be respectful, you can listen, but remember, garbage in, garbage out. Like you have that internal gut feeling when you know that what they're saying doesn't make a lot of sense, or what they're saying isn't true. And that's something I really want to hone in, right? Like as a high performer, when you're going after the best life that you want to create, it's not your responsibility to tell everybody about your beliefs and how the world operates, but you're responsible for ensuring that the beliefs that you're coming in aren't limiting beliefs and they're not stopping you from the person that you're supposed to become. So as I mentioned earlier, right, one of the hardest things with limiting beliefs is sometimes we don't even know that they're limiting beliefs, right? You can have beliefs right now that you think aren't limiting, but in truth they are. So you might ask the question, like, how do I identify if the beliefs I have today are limiting beliefs, are preventing me from creating the life I want to live? And you have to start to ask yourself a couple of these questions. Questions like, what assumptions do I constantly repeat? What scares me and why? Or where do I immediately disqualify myself? Or ask yourself, like, what opportunities do I think are not for people like me? And another really good one is to ask yourself, like, what beliefs came from my environment versus what beliefs are coming from me? And if you can take some time to get clear on those questions, you'll start to identify some thought patterns that you have. You'll start to look at these beliefs and you might ask yourself the question, like, are these beliefs bringing me closer to the person that I want to become, or are they halting me towards the person I want to become? Once you created that list of beliefs and you can see it clear, whether you write it down on a piece of paper, you put it down in your notes, I always recommend paper, by the way, your next step is to challenge those beliefs. But you don't do it with fear and you don't do it with emotion. You challenge limiting beliefs with evidence. Let me give you guys a quick example, right? Well, I know we just talked about the whole money perspective, so let's do a financial one because I think a lot of people can believe this, right? Let's say you have a limiting belief around you not being able to make $50,000 a month. We'll put that out there, whether you make it or not, right? And some people may believe, based on their background, based on their environment, that isn't possible, right? So the way to challenge that limiting belief is first you have to identify what it is. So from those questions that I've already prompted you with, then from there you need to find evidence of someone doing that thing. This is a hard one, right? Like with social media, we can now see people all over the internet. Sometimes it's so hard to believe what people are telling you constantly and over again. But if you do enough digging, if you do enough research, if you do enough talking to people, especially within your environment, going to networking events, meeting new people, you'll come to believe very quickly that these things are possible. And when I think about social media, a limiting belief I had around it was, in order to make a lot of money on social media, you need to have a massive following. I'm talking about millions of people, because if you don't have millions of followers, probably not making millions of dollars. And it wasn't until I joined mentorship groups. There was this one specific mentorship group. There was this girl, and I believe at the time she had around like 1,300 followers, so 1,300. And she was telling the group that she averages around $50,000 a month profit. And it was crazy because at the time of this recording, my Instagram had a lot more followers than her, but I wasn't making any money on Instagram because I always believed, oh, in order to make money on social media, you need to have millions of followers. And again, she was showing evidence. She was talking about how she did it. And that was the evidence that switched my brain and reminded me that, oh my gosh, that was a limiting belief that I held on to. Do you see why limiting beliefs are so expensive? Imagine if I kept kept on believing that over and over again for years after years. Imagine if I pass on that belief to friends or family. I would stop them from even going after their own potential. And I know I'm going over this video quickly. I might be making this concept of limiting beliefs sound simple, like this is something you can fix overnight. And I know it's a very difficult process. Like it's a process to really break free of your limiting beliefs, right? And I always talk about the first thing is to identify what they are, because that's a clear picture, right? And I'm a big believer of starting to challenge your limiting beliefs. So one thing with me, guys, I've been in so many different rooms, so many different spaces, and oftentimes when I've been in these spaces, I've been the only person, like whether I'm the only black male in the room, the only male in the room, the youngest in the room, the oldest in the room, whatever the case may be. And I remember vividly a few of these examples, right? Like when I was going to university within my residence building in my first year, I kid you not, I was one of 3 black males in that entire building. And in that building, there was over 600 students. And I remember how these limiting beliefs started to play in my head. Like, do I belong in spaces like this? Like I was asking myself the question, why don't I see more people that look like me? And every single time I caught myself thinking in that frame, I realized how dangerous it could have been, right? So another thing I always share, and this is something I've always led with throughout my entire life, right? And this is one of the reasons why I believe that I've had some relatively decent success at my age, is that even when you get into spaces where you're the only person of X, when you're the only female, when you're the only person from this background, whatever the case may be, whatever story you tell yourself, the framework that I always lean into is demonstrate with excellence. Because if you're a high performer, there's going to be times where you might be the youngest in the room. You might be the only person from this background. You might be the only female. You might be the only male. You might be the only person who doesn't have the qualifications. Your responsibility there is to lead and demonstrate with excellence. So what if you're the youngest there, right? Lead with excellence. So what if you're the only person from that background? Lead with excellence. And once you start to adopt this framework, this becomes a part of your identity. This becomes the standard that you set for your life. This will start to allow you to destroy all limiting beliefs that are stopping you from becoming the person you want to be. And this will allow you to become a high performer. Because I think back to so many times when I've been in boardrooms, I've been in meetings, I've been in seminars, I've been the only person. I've been the only black male in the room. I've been the youngest in the room. And I know how those thoughts start to come into your mind. Like, do I belong here? Am I welcome in spaces like this? Why don't I see anyone else who looks like me? And especially as you ascend to new heights, you enter in new rooms and new spaces, this is going to become very frequent if it hasn't happened to you already. But I want you to remember to lead with excellence. Once that becomes your default mechanism, you're going to lead in with confidence. You're going to speak with clarity, conviction. You know what the best part about this is? You are then going to set the tone for the next person. You are then going to be the example of, oh my gosh, this person was amazing. You are then going to inspire the next group of people to go after large goals. And another example that I think about quite often is when I was the president of my high school. So when I first came to my high school, I remember this vividly, was the president of my high school was a guy who looked just like me. So I was in grade 9, he was in grade 12, and I remember when I met him, after my conversation with him, I literally told myself in grade 9 that I would become the president of my high school. And I thought that was so powerful because he was evidence of it was already possible. He demonstrated excellence already, and that motivated so many people. So fast forward, when I got to grade 12, I then became the president of my high school. And as I was graduating and the next cohort of presidents and people on student council was coming in, there were so many more people who looked like me, who were inspired by me, whether they told me or not, because a few people have actually told me, like, listen, I applied because I saw you do it. I saw you do an amazing job. And so that's what I mean. When you demonstrate with excellence, you're not only leading the way for yourself, but you're allowing another generation of people, another generation of high performers to come in through the door, to allow more growth, to allow more ideas to be shaped. And that's what this is all about. So yeah, guys, that is it for today's video. This was an extremely powerful one. This is one of those videos where I don't want you to take lightly. I really want you to hear me when I'm saying these things in terms of breaking your limiting beliefs, identifying your limiting beliefs, and not allowing your limiting beliefs preventing you from going after the life that you want to create. If you want to be a part of a community of high performers where we talk about these concepts way more in depth, I want you to hit that first link in my description for my community waitlist, because once this community is built out, you'll be the first to be notified about all the amazing things that we have to offer. Another thing, if you're interested in one-on-one coaching, I'll leave the first link in the description as well and pinned in the comment section for you to book a call, and we'll see if you're a good fit for the one-on-one coaching, because this is where we can come and systemize your goals, break through your limiting beliefs and your patterns, and really allow you to reach your highest potential. As always, my name is Miles, aka Mr. High Performance. Make sure to always believe that you will achieve, and I am signing off. Woo!